My name is Eric Hellman. I've been working as a developer for a long time, and I'm currently working as head of development for iTeam Solutions. But I'm going to talk about something completely different, and it's the title is the technical solution behind Öppna Skolplattformen. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen. Let me see there, and there we go. Maria, does it look okay still? Great. Oh, yeah. Okay. So the title for this is the technical solution behind Öppna Skolplattformen, and the project that we did was called Öppna Skolplattformen. But the subtitle here for this is how we built a successful app for a hostile API provider. So yeah, it's also a story about how I became a parent without actually having any children, or at least that's what people thought. Well, more about that later. So, but first about this. In 2019, OECD published some statistics about digitalization in public sector, about a bunch of countries, and we're at the bottom, not the very, very bottom. There is actually one country below us of the countries that did measure. But we're on place 31 of the 32 countries included in how well our digitalization in public sector works. So we're really, really bad in Sweden. And this is like illustrated over and over again when we see public systems in not only for school, but in healthcare and, all over the place. So, I mean, this story is not unique, but the whole, how it went about is kind of interesting as well. So how did it start? Well, there is a school platform, a school system for parents, teachers, and students in Stockholm public schools. And this is how it's supposed to look like, if it works. So there is an app, and there is the website, and they use the same backend. It was a system that was purchased by the Stockholm City it started back in 2015. And it went on for a long time, and when it was launched, it turned out to be a problem. So this is how it's supposed to look like. And when you come here first, and actually before you log in, it actually looks like this. But more often than not, it looks like this. Technical error. You log in, something fails. You log in, you select something, it fails, and you get a technical error, tekniskt fel in Swedish. And this was something that a lot of, like almost every parent in Stockholm with school kids in the public school, they experienced this, and there was a lot of complaints. Like how bad could this be? But it was pretty bad all the time. There was also several incidents before it got published, and the project was delayed. It has up until 2020, it cost 1 billion Swedish crowns. For 117 million US dollars. And that's just a number, but it's equivalent. It's actually more than the cost for what India's Mars satellite costed. So India managed to send a satellite to Mars for less than this. So it's very interesting. How could this happen? How could it be that bad? As I said, this was the experience that most people had. Just logging in, nothing worked. You logged in, you switched some view, and it stopped working, and maybe you could see something, etc. So, well, the first rating was first measurement of how bad an app works is actually just looking at the reviews. So, what were the reviews in the App Store and Play Store? And having worked with apps, mobile apps for ever since the App Store came out, basically, this is the worst rated app I've ever seen. So how could that be? 1.1 out of 5. Well, if you think about this, both on App Store and on Play Store, it got 1.1 rating. A 1 star is the lowest rating you can give an app. So the fact that you have 1.1 as the average rating, it tells a lot. And you got this on both platforms. And furthermore, on iOS, you can actually reset the ratings. So even though they have reset the ratings, because we know that from as few ratings they have on App Store, it's actually still 1.1. Okay, that's the ratings. But what are people writing about this? What are the reviews? And again, I've been doing app development for some time. I've read a lot of critical app reviews, and some of these reviews are poetry. They're so good, they're so hilarious that I'm wondering, like, what is, like, how they actually spend time formulating this extravagant explanation of how bad it is. So one that compares the school platform to something that was created by a orangutan who was chained to his arm, lowered in water, and he's knocking around on the keyboard helplessly, and then he moves the mouse with his, like, by blowing on the mouse, and then when he's done, he gets raised up, and it's a blowfish that is acting as a test group. But since the blowfish doesn't say anything, they publish the thing. It's a very elaborate story. Someone compares this to how you're tired of life, and it makes me regret I'm getting kids. So I've never seen as much, like, negative reviews and as elaborate reviews for something less bad before. Okay, so this is how bad it is. But did they fix it then? Well, they didn't. So in March, this is the update history for the entire app for iOS up until March 2022. And there is just small bug fixes, as they claimed, and there is, like, some information in the app description they did. They'd actually never really fixed anything. So this is also very interesting. Okay, so me, I don't have any kids. I never really suffered from this, but someone who suffered a lot from this was my friend Christian. So Christian Landgren, he's also the CEO of iTeam Solutions, where I'm working right now. He launched a project called Öppna Skolplattformen by himself first, and he tried to remedy this problem by creating, like, a wrapper on top of this whole thing. He, like, wrote some messages in some Facebook groups and stuff, like, is someone interested in helping out? And this is how I became involved. So I have experience writing and publishing apps for a long time, but Christian has been working more with the full stack development, and he wanted to get someone to help him to do the actual app. So that's how I got involved. I thought this would be an interesting challenge, and we started working on it. And we launched an app in February. I think it was February 2021, and this is how the app looks today. You got a nice login screen, you get a list of your children's, and you get a calendar view, and there's a bunch of features there already. And this, we managed to put this together. In February 2021, version 1 was launched. You see some screenshots below here how it looked back then. We got a lot of people helping us through this journey, but we started out as 3 people. It was me, Christian Landgren, and then another guy called Johan Öbrink, who started working on this. And then we got some people helping us doing illustrations, doing UX design, helping us with some legal aspects, and all kinds of assistance, communication, PR, etc., etc. We launched it, and it was a huge success from the start. We also charged 12 crowns for it. 12 crowns is the lowest price you could put on an app on App Store, so that's why it ended up being 12 crowns. How good was it? Well, we ended up in the top paid apps on App Store for several weeks when we launched this. That was really fun. This was probably to the big annoyance to some of the other paid apps on App Store. But considering this was like a effort done by, like, a community of on their spare time, I think this was probably the first. And yeah, so we did pretty well there. So back to the technical stuff. How did we build this? Okay, so the architecture and design, let's look at that. So how do we start by building something like this? We didn't have access to any API documentation. We didn't have access to, we didn't get to talk to their team back, and they actually was, like, completely hostile towards this effort, as I'm gonna show you next. But yeah, so basically we just logged into the web portal, and we open up the developer tools in Chrome, and we check out the network calls that was made. So here we see, like, how it looks like after you logged in. They have a bunch of Angular scripts, and they have a bunch of JavaScript running here. This one is one of the core things called get children. Is one of the core functions, basically fetches the list of your children that you can see in the school platform. Once we got that, we can check the fetch or the XHR requests in Chrome. And we can see the actual JSON data received here. Now, since I don't have any children, I got an empty data array here, but this is how the responses back from their API looks like. I wouldn't call this a very consistent API. Sometimes it comes in JSON in this form, sometimes it's something else. But this was basically how we reversed engineer the entire API they used. We didn't have to decompile anything. We just went through the web portal and use the same APIs there. We don't know if their app is actually using the same APIs or if it uses something else, but regardless. Okay. So when we started building this, we went for React Native straight away. And the reason we went for React Native was not because of its technical superiority or anything like that. It was the closest thing for all developers. We couldn't do this without parents getting involved, and JavaScript is the most well-known developer language, and it's the one that's easiest to access for developers from other languages as well. So it was pretty natural to pick this one. It wasn't a preferred choice from technical standpoint. It was a preferred choice from developer experience standpoint. It's nice. It's easy to get started. It does have some drawbacks, which I'm going to get back to. Now, one of the drawbacks is that it doesn't come with a fully fledged UI framework that you can start working with. You have to pick something. And we picked something called UI Kitten. It's based on a design library called Eva Design. And this helped us a lot. It gave a bunch of stuff for free, so we didn't have to develop our own design system or something like that. So I can really recommend using UI Kitten if you are doing React Native development. Okay. Architecture. So the first iteration of the architecture was formed like this. We had 3 different NPM projects, basically. We had the React Native app. We had the embedded API, which was the thing that was doing the actual network calls towards the Stockholm City APIs. And then we had a separate NPM library called API hooks. All these embedded API and API hooks was published on the NPM repositories. So when we needed to update something in the API integration, we had to publish a new library and we had to rebuild the app. So it was a little bit of a workaround here, but the problem is that React Native doesn't really support a monorepo architecture out of the box. We're going to get back to that point a little bit later. So you can't have referenced multiple libraries and stuff. It's a little bit awkward working with that. But this was how it was in the beginning. We knew that this was probably not what we're going to stay with in the long run, but this was what we used to get started. So this means that someone who didn't have experience working with React Native but could do API integration could still work on the embedded API because we had test suites that could run on the console. So API hooks look something like it's used like this. Basically, we just had a wrapper around a root component in React. We had initialized it, and then we also pulled in the embedded API thing here. So we passed on the API instance after the init call. This is very typical how you would do something in React or React Native. So this is probably, if you're used to that, it's probably nothing new to you. Like how this was used then, we had also done a wrapper on top of fetch, basically. And on top of that, we had, so we could do like the calls very simplified. So we didn't have to do the fetch call all over through the app. It basically just an API wrapper that underneath was hooked into the actual network calls. This is how the login controller worked when used with Bank ID. Okay, so we managed to extract a number of API endpoints routes, as we call them in the React world there. and a number of API endpoints. We had the login endpoint, which basically started the bank ID login. We had the login status, which you use if you ever used bank ID login before. You know that you have to do a polling check from the client to see what the status is. We had a route that we had to call after we were logged in order to receive all the cookies that was used by the rest of the system. And then we had the infamous get children endpoint. The get children endpoint was the one that was always being manipulated and destroyed or broken by Stockholm City. And then we had a bunch of other stuff here for getting the list of classmates, your calendar, getting the user information for the current logged in user, news, notifications, the school menu. That's like basically what will the kid get in school today for lunch, etc., etc. So there was a bunch of endpoints here that we could get. There might be more, but at the first iterations, this was what we found. Yeah. So this was what it looked like in February 2021. Now in May 2022, May this year, the number of routes had grown. A few of these were new features that we had added, but most of these endpoints were added by Stockholm City in order to block us. They were basically just creating a hurdle for us to make sure that we make it harder for us or try to block us from actually building this app. Because as I said, they were a hostile API provider. The Stockholm City did not like this project at all. So the first blocking attempt. So before they started blocking us, this is how the code for fetching the list of your children looked like. So this is in the API implementation. Basically, we had our own fetch function, which just looked up the URL, make that call, and return the data that was from the response. And this worked fine most of the time. We should also mention that their backend was sometimes broken, so sometimes you did not get the data, and then we had to retry that one. So we have some retry logic as well. So Stockholm City did not like this, and they tried to block us. So as soon as we had launched the app, a few weeks later, they did this change. I'm going to go through it here. So instead of just calling the get children URL and get the list of children, they had added, and only for this specific get children call, they had added 3 additional calls that you needed to make. First, you had to get something called a CDN URL. We do not know what the CDN means in this context. It does not mean content delivery network. It means something else. But it basically is a URL where we call something and we get another URL back as a string. That's the only thing in the response. It was always the same URL, but since they did it and we thought that maybe they will change this one, so let's call the same URL. Then we had to call another function, another URL called getAuthBody, which will return a token for us. And finally, we use that one to call a second auth URL in order to get another token that we then had to use for the get children call. This was all they added in order to block us. So let's look at the code for these functions here. The first 2 are pretty simple. It's basically just straight, you fetch that one, you get a string back. You call the other one, you get a string back. And now we got 2 strings. We got a URL and we got a token, or auth body, as it was called in their code. Now this third one looks like this. So first of all, we pass in the URL and we pass in the auth body that we got in the 2 previous calls. Then we had to remove any cookies that was set on the client this far. This means that we have already logged in, so we have a bunch of auth cookies that was used by the system. We had to clear all those, but we store them away. We keep them, we take them out and we store them for later. And once we cleared all the cookies and cleared all the session tokens and everything like that, then we make the URL call for the URL that we got in the first call together with the body from the auth token that we got in the second call. And now we get a second response. This response will also set a bunch of cookies. Now, once that response was successful, we put all the cookies back into the cookie manager that we just removed, and then we make the get children call. it took us a while to figure this one out, and we were like, what is happening here? We have no clue. Okay, this is weird. Yeah, anyway. So we fixed that one, and we were like, okay, whatever. Seems awkward. And the funny thing was that their app, their website got much slower because the client this had to be done sequentially, and it made the whole process for logging in and getting the list of your children slower. So people did see first an empty list, and then eventually it populated with a list of your children. So so we made some improvements on this one to make it faster on our side. Now, okay. So then they tried to block us again, and this was when it was apparent that the engineers doing this, the system from the Stockholm City, they didn't really understand how apps work. So they tried to add cross-site request forgery tokens, or XSRF tokens, as they called. Anyone done front end probably knows what this means. So they added this one in order to block us. So they added a XSRF token in the HTML, and that one was, we had to read that one and have to send that one to the client. And we were like, okay, sure, let's do that. So after we logged in, we fetch that page where the XSRF token is added in the HTML. We parse the HTML, extract the token, and then just add that to our headers. And it's a header that named x-xsrf-token. And that's it. And we were like, okay, fine, we have to do that. The problem was that every time we did say change, we had to republish a new version of the app. So things like, we were like annoyed because there was a review time by Apple and Google already then. So it took a day for us to fix this every time. And we're like, fine, okay, now please stop doing this. While we were doing this, we tried to have a conversation with the city of Stockholm City and saying, please, like, you can't really block us. There's no point of trying. Can we just try to work together? But no, they kept trying this cross-site request forgery token 5 more times by renaming the header. Note here that this is how the request looks like. They kept the old original cross-site request forgery token, and then they added another one. At first, they renamed it to y-xsrf-token 11. And then they just kept increasing the number for token 11 to 25 and 49, etc., etc. And they kept doing that for 5 times. At the 5th time, we were like, or I think it was the 4th time already, we decided, look, it's gonna take too much time for us to just publish the app every time they change the token name here. Why don't we just put a JSON file somewhere online where we can change this, tweak this easily, and then we don't have to get rid of the problem. We don't have to republish everything. So we added a JSON file in our Git repository that was published on the GitHub pages, which the client fetches when it starts up. And in that one, it says what the header is called now and what the token is called now, etc., etc. And at the 5th time here, they actually stopped doing this renaming thing. And we're like, okay, fine. Okay, now we're good, right? The city is still mad at us, but they stopped trying to block us. At least parents can get something useful. Okay, so they called the cops. They said, no, you're trying to hack us. So you're doing hacking here. So we want you to. So we're pressing charges here. This now we really got nervous because we were like, this is untried areas. Is what we're doing technically legal or not? We weren't sure, so we were a little bit worried there. But all legal experts that we talked to were like, no, this is fine. You're not doing anything bad. And we were like, okay, this was in April, and the police they closed the case in August 2021, the same year. No actions. It was not a crime. This is nothing a problem. They were actually being a little bit annoyed at the Stockholm City because they were wasting their time. But this, there was quite a long time here, so we were a little bit nervous. It was a bit nervous summer there where we didn't know what was going to happen. Anyway, meanwhile, while this was going on, and the reason why it took so long for them to do this was that during that summer, maybe some of you remember, Coop, among others, got hacked. So the police, IT forensics police, actually had other things to do. This is why they didn't prioritize this one. So they said that if we wouldn't have had any other big issues, we probably would have closed this one earlier. Anyway, it's fine. It's closed. It's behind us. But meanwhile, while we were doing this, we added more translations. We got a lot of people helping us. We had people adding languages. God knows how many languages we had. We had Japanese, we had Norwegian, Polish, etc. We also have Ukrainian. The same lady who drew these illustrations that you see here also added Latin as a translation, because why not? So we had a bunch of translations. We had a dark mode and a bunch of other fun stuff. Now, another thing that we focused on, that I worked a lot on, was accessibility. So there is this, according to the law, the European law now, we actually have to fulfill the accessibility requirements, which the Stockholm City does not with their official web and official app. But we can actually say that we are pretty close to fulfilling the accessibility requirements all over through the app now. There are still some areas that we need to improve, but pretty much this can be used with a screen reader or any other accessibility support tools today, both on Android and on iOS. In order to do this, I want to mention a tool. If you're ever going to do accessibility review of an app, there is an app for Android called Accessibility Scanner. It's made by Google, but basically what it does is record your screen and mention what are the accessibility issues that it can find on each screen. It's a super useful tool. I highly recommend everyone to use this one in your app projects. Okay, so once they closed the police investigation, we were thinking, okay, now at least we're finally done. Can we start talking to the Stockholm City now? And there were some signals, especially from the politicians, where we thought that now things are going to turn around and they're going to start talking to us, and maybe we can make a deal of some kind. But no. Suddenly in September, the app stopped working, and we're like, okay, what now? Have they updated the header name again to something completely different, or what is it? No. So we logged in and checked the code, and we see this. You see the background here. It was basically, they obfuscated the JavaScript, and that was used. Well, like, even if they obfuscated the JavaScript, it should still work because we're not parsing their JavaScript. So why did it stop working? We were trying to figure it out, decompiling or de-obfuscating the JavaScript code. And it turns out that besides the obfuscation, they were generating a client-side key that was used in the authentication towards this get children mechanism. And we're like, okay, what is this? So it took us a while to figure this one out and crack it, or rather not crack it, but just basically read the code. And with a while, I mean, it took us literally 5 hours. We were like 3 people looking at this one. One guy managed to do it in the afternoon there. And this is the code. It's get topology. That was what it was called in their code. So it starts by you get the current date, and then you have a list of words statically encoded into the client, and then you append the current time. And then you have another string of characters, and then you have a number that tells you how many times you should call base 64 on this string. And once you take base 64 on this string, you substring it into several parts and you bunch it all together. Okay. And we're like, sure, well, let's try this. So we tried it, and it worked one time, and then it failed the second time. We're like, hold on. What's that? That's a time. Turn out that this timestamp they had, if it was too old, the key was considered invalid. So they did the same generation on the back end, of course, and then they took it apart and they checked that the time was within a certain, it wasn't too old. But this means that if the client's computer or the client's phone is off by 30 seconds, every call will fail. So what happened is when they updated their app and their website with this, a bunch of parents couldn't log in anymore because their login calls failed. And we're like, this is stupid. Why are they doing this? And of course, this is also like, it's not going to work properly. So they basically managed to have all their clients trying to spam them with new login all the time because they couldn't get in because their time on their phone was a slightly bit off. We also suspect that there's this time, the clock on the servers, at least some of the servers, were a little bit off, because we checked that we had the correct time and we still got the denied call. I'm like, okay, this is really bad. Well, it turns out they only checked it was too old. They didn't check if it was in the future. So we added an hour and things were solved. Yeah. I mean, I don't like working with time and dates, but this was hilarious. I was like, okay, this is insane. Did they actually pay for this? Turns out they did. So they actually had we requested to get all the invoices from their supplier for this, and this was the cost for that month. So for about 95,000 Swedish crowns, they had paid for the encryption of scripts. This was the work they paid for this. So this is tax money going into something that was completely pointless, broke their own system, and made everything slower. At the best case, they also had in this they had developed a new architecture for within this project, and they also had a stress analysis. I like the quotes there, stress analysis. I wonder what they were stressing. Fun. We called it a phantom crypto because it wasn't really crypto, it wasn't there. And we reversed engineered the whole crypto for doing this thing, for generating this key. We thought that, if taxpayers paid for it, let's publish it. So you can find this crypto here. It's on our GitHub profile. If you want to use it, please don't use it because there's no security in this. It's just pointless. But anyway, there you go. They removed this, obviously, because it didn't really work, and it made everything slower, and it broke a bunch of stuff on their own app and their own website. Okay. Meanwhile, we were like, okay, this thing we're having the 3 different NPM projects was like, it didn't scale very well. We had to do changes in one part, and then we had to update in the UI, and they were republishing the app. So we were trying to find a way to do monorepo. React Native has a problem that it doesn't support the workspaces in NPM as we usually do with the NPM projects, because it doesn't support soft links inside Windows. And there is a bunch of details here that's outside the scope here. But anyway, we had to find a different solution in order to do a monorepo where we could put the libraries into the same Git project. And we found NX, which is a solution for doing monorepos for Node projects. And they also have a plugin to do it for React Native apps. That looks like this. So yeah, I can recommend this one. Have a look at it. You might need it. It might be solved in other ways today. I'm not sure. I haven't checked up on this. But this is what we used and we're still using. Now, the architecture today looks like this. We have the app and we have a bunch of libraries. And as you can see there, we have the API, which is the API definition. We have the hooks, which used to be our API hooks. And then we have a bunch of implementation. We have Skolplattformen, which is this one for Stockholm City. And we got Järntorget, which is the one for Gothenburg. And then we have started on Vietclass. And then we have some utilities called, today is only the curriculum, which is the standard way of the codes for different subjects in school, basically, the curriculum that we use for the schedule and stuff like that. Also, at the same time, here now, the Wired got in contact with us and thought that, hey, this sounds interesting. Can we interview about this? And if having been in IT and worked with startups for a long time, I was thinking that if I ever end up here, it would be while working at a startup, right? But no, it was at an open source app that we we published and where we got sued, called where they called the cops on us. So this was interesting. But at least I ended up in Wired magazine. We actually ended up in the printed version of the UK Wired as well. But this was also when I was named a parent. So I don't have any kids. But this was a detail that got dropped in this process here. So friends contacted me saying, Eric, is there something you haven't told us? But yeah, anyway, this is very fun to read, and yeah, completely unexpected. So as I told you, we also have support for Gothenburg, and the way we did this was we couldn't do this unless we had a parent with children in the school system who could write this code for us. And we had people from like all over Sweden contacting us. We had actually people outside Stockholm who bought the app just in order to support us. But a lot of requests from parents all over Sweden saying, our school system also sucks. Can you please come and fix it? And we explained it every time. Yeah, we need someone who can write code to do this. And a lot of requests came from Gothenburg. And it's by a chance, my younger brother, who lives in Gothenburg, has 3 children in the Gothenburg public school system. So he spent 2 weeks writing the implementation for that one. 2 weeks was all he needed. And it works. And I mean, one reason it works is that their system is a little bit better. But also Gothenburg wasn't actively hostile towards us. They were actually saying, oh, that sounds nice. We can't really give you anything or like provide you with any documentation or pay you, but feel free. We're not going to stop you. So completely different opinion there compared to Stockholm. Now we have others who are like trying to do it for other schools as well, but people like Stockholm there's a lot of people living in Stockholm, so it's natural that it was possible to do quicker here. Anyone listening who are living in another city, feel free to contact us and we can help you get started on an adapter for your city as well. Okay, so far we've done 23 releases. We have about 13,000 lines of TypeScript. We use TypeScript now. So it's not super big in code-wise. We have 63 contributors so far, all done on spare time, and nobody's actually getting paid to work on this app. And this is the statistics from May 2021 to from February 2021 to May 2022 on iOS. At that time, we had 11,000 downloads. We have a little bit less on Android, and this number also increased. I haven't generated a new report like this for this fall, but it's a couple of thousand people more, which is nice. People like the app. It works, at least for Stockholm. Gothenburg has modified their system and are replacing it, so we have to update the integration there. Lessons learned. First of all, React Native. Very low threshold to get started. If you're gonna do something like this, or if you need to get an app out quickly and don't have any high technical challenges like Bluetooth or camera or stuff like that, React Native is usually suitable. The developer experience is great from the beginning, but you will need to do a complete clean of your workspace every now and then for mysterious reasons. The support for iOS is better than Android, and the performance of a React Native app is not always great. So you might, especially on lower end devices, you might end up with it crashing because it basically stalls the main thread sometimes. So that might be something to keep in mind as well. Other lessons learned about this: all APIs are open. If you have an API on the internet, even if you put a bunch of stuff in front of it, someone is going to figure out how to reverse engineer it if it's used by an app somewhere. If you annoy users enough, they will try fixing themselves. And the best way to make people work for free is to make it about their kids. So that's the 3 lessons that we kind of learned from this whole story here. And with that, I just want to say thank you very much. You can find the app. It's open source completely, even though we pay for it on App Store and Play Store. You can find it here on GitHub, and you can find a story about everything that happened on skolplattformen.org. And with that, I would like to thank you very much for listening to me, and I will take any questions you have.
Thank you. Thank you, Erik. I saw a question during the webinar, and after that, I think everyone can just pop up their own questions. But I saw that Fredrik Edin was wondering if there were any languages you lacked at the time.
You mean translations in the app?
Yeah.
Not that we have got requests for. Actually, we have some requests in our issue reporting on GitHub, so you can check there if there's anything if there's something that you can contribute with. It's super easy. Just let us know, and we'll give you the login to the translation tool that we use, and you can add it yourself. Actually.
Great. And if there's anyone else, just turn on your mic and feel free to ask Eric anything.
Yeah, I'm a little bit curious about the openness of the platform. You said that Stockholm City was a bit hostile and reported you to the police and so on and so forth. Does that mean that it was not intended to be used openly as you have done now?
Yeah, if it was, were they hostile? Yeah, they were very hostile to us. But regarding the quality of their API, I would say everything was an afterthought. They didn't really design this as an API to be used. It's also obvious that there are many small systems developed by separate entities that probably haven't been coordinating. Some things, like if you just check how the responses work and the endpoints where you call stuff, it was like completely different. It was like, yeah, it was just a big mess of stuff basically. So I don't think there was any design thinking in regarding API here at all.
Yeah, but if we disregard the design and technical stuff, just politically, or I mean...
Oh yeah, no, the Stockholm City doesn't have they have an open data because they have to legally, by law, they have to provide open data, but there is no open source initiative for Stockholm City as other cities have. Like if you go look at Alingsås or Sundsvall or Helsingborg, they actually have the reverse, where they try to push everyone who, when there is an information system there, it should be open and openly accessible. Maybe not through an open API, but at least open data. But Stockholm City doesn't have anything like that. Not for the school systems, at least.
I read an account of someone who went through the invoices from the consultancy, and I don't remember the details, but was it you who started with by doing that? And
yeah, that was Christian who did that, and he did it now again just a few weeks ago, where he started reviewing what the maintenance cost has been lately, and it's a lot. It's several hundred millions a year, and it's basically they were charging the same amount every month all around the year, even during summer when like there literally were nobody working on this. So yeah. Yeah, I see. Well, a lot of people sharing on this one. It's fun to hear. And yes, you're also mentioning the supplier for Stockholm City. I'm not going to mention them by name. But yes, I think this is actually something that people should look at more. Why is nobody questioning them? It's one thing to question the people in Stockholm City who have made these decisions, but someone has told them to do this. They are not technical experts, so we should actually put our eyes on this this provider. Do we have any dialogue with Stockholm City today? So yes, we have a change in leadership in the Stockholm City. So yes, we do have a better dialogue with to them so far, but it's only on a political level. We had discussions with their politicians before as well, but as some of you probably know, in public sector, especially in the municipalities, there is this politicians take decisions on policies and budgets and stuff like that. They don't tell the individual people working there exactly what to do. That's against how it should be, and it shouldn't be like that. But they can put a policy, they can change the policy basically, and we're hoping they will do that.
I wanted to ask a follow-up question on that. I read something in the past year that they had, like, I don't know, somehow I thought that they would now be open, like how you described Alingsås, or was it?
Yeah.
But so maybe that is not come to life yet, or?
So I mean, the city of Stockholm is huge, and they have a lot of different initiatives going. So there are other areas where they are more open. They are, but when it comes to the school platform and the school systems, they are doing a new. They have for now, since summer, planned a new system. They're going to redo everything. And it's still ongoing, this request here, so nothing is decided yet. I don't want to assume anything here, so let's see what happens. But if it seems like they are doing the same mistake as before, huge, super big project, and yeah, don't have much hope.
All right, yeah, but so you're not like this hostility that you had definitely like obvious in the beginning. They're not treating you like that anymore, or?
So we're not talking. We have never had a concrete discussion with the people working with this in Stockholm City, or the engineers themselves. They have never really spoken to us. We had a few meetings in the beginning, but it turned out they were just basically just lying to our face, because once we got out, they were actually just going in and blocking us. Try again. So no, we don't have any discussions. We don't expect it to change soon either. We're open to having a talk with them and figuring things out and helping them, because I mean, our code is open source. They can just copy it themselves if they want to.
Yeah, but so when was the last time that you saw these like pretty clear signs of like they just trying to tamper? And,
that was when they tried to do the obfuscation.
Right.
The last thing there, that was August last year. So now it's been going more than a year, and they haven't tried anything new.
Okay, cool.
So I got the question, in what way I would like to change the policy. Well, I think that Sundsvall and Alingsås are the leading examples here of how it should be done. Like, pick an open source system. If you're developing something yourself within the city budget, you're actually paying for development time, make that code open source as well. And the reason that is not like I'm just like think everything should be open source. It's actually that it's taxpayer money. We should see the system that's being developed by the city, and there are already cases in similar areas where this has been the cities or the government has been forced to do this when they were using AI to review stuff, and then someone demanded to see the code for this AI, and they got right, etc. So there are cases where this has already been applied, and I think that this should just be the policy. Any new code written for public money should be open source as a principle. There are, of course, exceptions. There are always, but public school systems is not one of those. So yeah, what more question do we have here? Do we have Chinese? Yeah, I think we have Chinese, but I'm not really sure. You can check the code. I think it should be visible there. And yeah, I think I have. Oh yeah, so the question about the supplier there. Oh, the list of who yeah, let's see, the list of the top countries in the OECD. Well, Korea, France, and Ireland actually are there and Iceland is part of that one also, I think. Yeah, but yeah, the best ones. I know that also it's wasn't in the slide there, but Estonia is doing really well. So I think those are most similar to us. I think we should look at what Estonia is doing and follow their example in many ways. And how they're doing it, I don't really know, but it's basically, the combination of having openness as a principle, I would say, is one of the things that helps. It's not a security issue to have open source, publish your code as open source. It actually makes things more secure. So yeah. Gulf Syria in Taiwan. Yes, someone talked about that in our group. I think we have someone, we have checked that one out as well. We have also gotten questions about can you help us with this open source system and stuff like that. That's come into our group of people. We have our own Discord chat. We have where we try to do other projects as well. So a lot of the open source e-government thing is on our radar. Okay,
Yeah, I have a little question. Thank you for a great presentation, by the way, Eric. Really good.
Thank you.
If I remember correctly from the media, you reported quite a few security issues that you found in the school platform, right?
Yes, and it turns out it wasn't super easy to do that because they didn't really have a way to communicate security breaches. They didn't really have an incident report system in there. And we also know that things we reported were, some of them are still not fixed. When they launched this first, they had a really, really severe security issue. That was before we got started, but I think the reason why they are so hostile was because how that was reported. The first security incident when the system was launched was basically that if you went into the URLs that was called by the browser and you just modify the ID, you can get some other children's information, or some other parents' information. Basically, just modify the URL, even though you shouldn't have access. And that, I think that burned them a lot, so they got really hostile toward any external reviews, reports, any people poking on their system. They thought that everybody's trying to hack them. So I think that's the reason why they were so afraid. Yeah, exactly. Hotmail 999. Yeah, I don't know. That's there were lots of issues. We have reported publicly about some of them when they were fixed, but there are still some things, and we're not talking about them publicly for obvious reasons.
Yeah, that was kind of what I was wondering if they plugged the leaks or not, but yeah.
Yeah, there is no like this super serious issue that we know about today. There are things that you should fix this, or this is weak security, but yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions?